My wife lived off my salary, maxed out credit cards, blamed me for everything. So I quietly planned my exit and left her begging for help. I met Melissa, my wife, a 32-year-old woman, during my third year of community college. I was studying construction management and working part-time at a lumber yard to pay for tuition. She was this stunning brunette in her senior year at the state university, pursuing a double major in women's studies and business. She seemed way out of my league, but somehow, she noticed me while I was delivering supplies for the new student center being built on her campus. Looking back, I should have seen the red flags from the beginning. On our first date, I took her to a family-owned Italian restaurant. It was nothing fancy, but the food was incredible. She made a comment about how quaint it was, then spent half the night talking about this exclusive rooftop restaurant downtown where important people network. But she laughed at my jokes, touched my arm while talking, and damn, she was the most beautiful woman who'd ever given me the time of day. We dated for 2 years before getting married. During that time, she was all about her career ambitions, talking about breaking glass ceilings and becoming a high-powered executive. I supported her 100%, working overtime to help pay for her grad school applications and listening to her practice interviews. I was so proud to be with someone so ambitious and driven. After we got married at 25, things changed. Not overnight, but gradually, like water eroding rock. Her career ambitions mysteriously transformed into expensive tastes and zero effort. The first job she got after graduation was as an office manager at a small marketing firm. She quit after 3 months because her boss didn't respect her potential and expected her to do menial tasks beneath her education level. That boss asked her to make coffee for a client meeting. Meanwhile, I was busting my ass, working my way up from basic construction to crew leader to assistant project manager. Melissa bounced between part-time receptionist gigs that never lasted more than a few months. It was always the same story. The boss was sexist, the environment was toxic, and the company didn't value work-life balance. Meanwhile, I was putting in 60-plus-hour weeks, coming home with aching muscles and dirt under my fingernails, despite my promotion to management. We bought our first place together. Well, technically, I bought it. It was my down payment, my mortgage, about 4 years ago. It was nothing fancy, just a decent 3-bedroom in a nice neighborhood with good schools nearby. I was thinking ahead, maybe kids someday, you know? Melissa immediately started talking about renovations, how we needed to upgrade the kitchen because the countertop was so 2010, and how the master bath needed a complete overhaul because she deserved a soaking tub. I didn't mind at first. I figured she wanted to make our house a home, but then I realized she had no intention of doing any of the work herself. No, these were jobs for professionals, meaning expensive contractors, not something her husband, who literally manages construction projects for a living, could handle on weekends. By year 5 of our marriage, I had worked my way up to managing major development projects, overseeing millions in budgets and dozens of workers. My salary had more than doubled since we got married, but instead of seeing our improved finances as an opportunity to save for the future, Melissa saw it as her personal shopping fund. A typical day went like this. I dragged myself out of bed at 5 a.m., hit the gym for a quick workout, the only thing keeping my stress level somewhat manageable, then was on site by 7 a.m. I'd spend the day solving problems, mediating, disputes between subcontractors, dealing with permit issues, and making sure deadlines were met. By the time I got home around 7 p.m., my back would be killing me from walking the site, my head pounding from staring at blueprints, and my hands still calloused despite the promotion to management. All I wanted, literally the only damn thing I wanted, was to walk through that door to a decent meal, and a wife who acted like she was happy to see me. Instead, I'd find Melissa lounging on our leather couch that I paid for, scrolling through Instagram or watching some reality show about rich housewives, surrounded by shopping bags from stores where t-shirts cost more than what some of my crew made in a day. The house was always a disaster. Dishes piled up, laundry everywhere, and takeout containers stacked in the trash. If I asked about dinner, I'd get, "Oh, I ordered DoorDash. Should be here in like 30 minutes. You can Venmo me for your half. Venmo me for your half." Let that sink in. While she sat comfortably in the house I paid for, wearing clothes I bought and eating food I provided, I was jobless and broke, yet she still expected me to Venmo her for my share of the takeout she ordered, just because she refused to cook. Initially, I transferred her the money without comment. I was too tired to argue. But each time it happened, the knot in my stomach grew tighter. We used to have sex regularly when we first got married. Nothing crazy, but it was normal, healthy intimacy that had dwindled to maybe once a month. It was always on her terms, always, when she wanted something. I started to notice the pattern. She'd get extra affectionate right before telling me about some expensive thing she needed to buy. On the rare occasions she did cook, she acted like she deserved a medal. I spent hours making this pasta, Jake. It was box pasta with jarred sauce and frozen meatballs. It took 20 minutes tops. Meanwhile, my mom, who worked part-time as a school secretary, still managed to have hot meals on the table every night of my childhood. I'm not saying I expected some 1950s housewife situation. I don't mind cooking or cleaning. I grew up with 2 brothers and know how to take care of myself. But I was working 12-hour days, commuting another hour each way, while she was what? Watching Netflix, shopping, and getting lunch with her friends, who were all either living off their husbands or trust funds. The breaking point was coming. I just didn't know it yet. It all came to a head one Friday in July. I had just closed a massive deal that would mean a significant bonus, potentially mid-5 figures. The project was a new mixed-use development downtown, and I had managed to bring it in under budget despite the supply chain issues that had been kicking everyone's ass since COVID. My boss pulled me aside that afternoon, shook my hand, and told me I was being considered for senior project manager, a position that would bump my salary into solid 6 figures. I was ecstatic driving home. For a guy who started as a basic laborer with just an associate's degree, this was the big leagues. I stopped and picked up a dessert, thinking maybe Melissa and I could celebrate, maybe reconnect a little. I thought this good news would spark something in her, remind her of the team we used to be. I walked in the door at 6:30 p.m. Early for me, I called out, "Babe, I'm home. Got some amazing news." I found her in the living room scrolling through her phone as usual. She glanced up briefly and said, "Hey, there's no food. I wasn't expecting you back so early." I held up the dessert. "I thought we could celebrate. The downtown project came in under budget, and Phillips is considering me for senior PM." She set her phone down. "Progress, I guess." "Oh, that's nice. What does that mean exactly?" I explained about the bonus, the promotion, possibility, and the salary bump. As I talked, I could see her mentally calculating how much more she could spend. Not once did she say she was proud of me or acknowledge the work that had gone into this achievement. Instead, she said, "That's perfect timing, because there's this feminist podcast panel discussion happening in Chicago this weekend. All the big names will be there. It's like $500 for tickets. Plus, we'd need a hotel. But with your bonus coming," she trailed off. "This weekend, I was hoping we could celebrate together. Maybe go to dinner at Giovanni. That was the Italian place where we had our first date. Still my favorite restaurant in town." She made a face. "Giovanni? That place is so basic. Besides, this panel is important for my networking. They're discussing the modern female experience in corporate America." I couldn't help myself. "What would you know about corporate America? You haven't held a job for more than 3 months in years." Her expression changed instantly. Her eyes narrowed. "Excuse me? That's incredibly insensitive. You know how toxic the workplace is for educated women. The microaggressions alone," I interrupted, setting the dessert down on the coffee table. "We need to talk about how things are going." She rolled her eyes dramatically. "About what?" Now I'm trying to relax. "About this." I gestured around at the mess that was our marriage. "I feel like I'm carrying everything while you're just along for the ride." The look she gave me could have frozen hell. "Excuse me? Are you seriously bringing up this patriarchal nonsense? I didn't marry you to be your maid or your personal chef. If you want someone to clean up after you, hire someone with your big manly paycheck." I nearly choked. "This isn't about gender roles, Melissa. This is about partnership. I work my ass off all day and you contribute nothing. Not money, not effort, not even basic appreciation." "Contribute nothing?" She sat up straight, eyes blazing. "I contribute plenty. I manage our social life. I keep us connected to people that can boost your career. Do you know how exhausting it is? What does it mean to be a woman in today's society? The emotional labor involved is immense." "Emotional labor." I cut her off. "I have coworkers with families to support, working dangerous jobs and breaking their bodies down, yet they still come home and help their wives. This isn't about gender. It's about you being lazy and entitled." "Lazy? Lazy?" Her voice shot up an octave. "You have no idea what I do all day. Just because I'm not out playing in the dirt with your construction buddies doesn't mean I'm not working. I'm maintaining our image, our social standing." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "The only image you're maintaining is on Instagram, where you pretend to be some boss babe while spending money you didn't earn." She stood up, her face flushed with anger. "You're just threatened by a strong woman who knows her worth. My father would never speak to my mother this way." I shot back. "Your father is a corporate lawyer who makes 7 figures, and your mother actually raised you and your sisters while running a charity foundation. They're not exactly comparable to our situation." That was a low blow, bringing up her wealthy family. They had never fully approved of me. the blue-collar guy who wasn't quite good enough for their princess. They paid for our wedding, but made it clear they thought Melissa was settling. Sometimes I wondered if she thought so too. I can't believe you're attacking me like this on a Friday night when all I wanted was to relax. This is borderline abusive. She grabbed her phone and stormed out of the room, slamming our bedroom door behind her. I stood there in the messy living room, the unopened dessert mocking me from the coffee table. I grabbed a soda from the fridge and sat on the back deck, staring at the yard I had landscaped myself on weekends while Melissa was at self-care appointments. As I sat there in the growing darkness, something shifted inside me. This wasn't just a rough patch or a bad day. This was my life. I was working myself to exhaustion to fund a lifestyle for someone who didn't appreciate it, didn't contribute to it, and apparently resented me for even asking. For the first time, I allowed myself to really consider whether this was what I wanted for the next 40 years. The answer was so clear, it actually took my breath away. No damn way. That night, I slept on the couch. In the morning, I woke up to find Melissa had already left, her passive-aggressive way of punishing me. There was a credit card notification on my phone, $600 at Nordstrom, time-stamped 8:15 a.m. The message was clear: cross me, and I'll make you pay. Little did she know, I was done paying. All weekend, Melissa gave me the silent treatment, only breaking it to make passive-aggressive comments when she bothered to be home at all. She spent most of Saturday with her friends, then came home with shopping bags, making sure I saw each designer label as she carried them upstairs. I guess since you think I'm so worthless, you won't mind me buying these shoes to make myself feel better, she'd say, then flash her phone screen showing another several $100 purchase she just made on my credit card. On Sunday morning, she announced she was going to brunch with her friends and not to wait up because they might do a spa day afterward. I just nodded, already formulating my plan. The thing about managing construction projects is you learn to be methodical. You don't just tear down a wall without understanding what's behind it and what will happen when it's gone. You assess, plan, and execute with precision. That's exactly what I was going to do with my marriage while Melissa was out spending more of my money with her friends, who, by the way, were a mix of trust fund babies who'd never worked a day in their lives, and other women living off husbands while preaching female empowerment. I sat down at my desk and really looked at our finances for the first time in months. What I found made me sick to my stomach. We had less than $5,000 in savings. Despite my solid income, credit card debt totaled over $30,000 across 6 different cards, most of it from Melissa's shopping and spa days. She'd even taken out a store credit card at Nordstrom that I didn't know about, maxed it out at $7,500, and had been making minimum payments from our joint checking account. I pulled our bank statements for the past 6 months. On average, Melissa was spending nearly $6,000 a month on what? Clothes, restaurants, Uber Eats, Sephora, salon appointments, wellness treatments, whatever those were. More clothes. Meanwhile, I hadn't bought new work boots in a year, despite needing them. I was still using the same worn-out gym bag I'd had since college. I kept putting off the fishing trip with my dad, a trip I'd dreamed about for years, because we simply didn't have the extra money. Meanwhile, that night, when she stumbled home tipsy from yet another expensive brunch at 7:00 p.m., I finally decided it was time to make my move, while she was in the bath, taking her sweet time with the expensive bath bombs I'd bought her for Christmas. I sat down with my laptop and made some financial changes. First, I moved most of our joint money into an account only I could access, leaving just enough to cover the mortgage and utilities for the next month. Then, I canceled all but one of her credit cards and set a $200 weekly limit on the remaining one. Lastly, I set up alerts for any purchase over $50. I also checked our cell phone account and discovered she'd been regularly texting a number I didn't recognize, often late at night. I didn't read the messages. I didn't want to at that point, but I made a mental note of the number. When she got out of her hour-long bath and checked her phone, the explosion was nuclear. "What the hell did you do?" she screamed, storming into the living room, wearing just a towel and holding up her phone, showing decline notifications. I didn't even stand up from the couch, where I was watching a baseball game. I just looked her dead in the eyes. "I adjusted your spending limits to match your contribution to this household." Her face went through about 5 different expressions before settling on rage. "You can't do that. That's financial abuse. I'll call my sister's friend, who's a women's rights attorney." "And go ahead," I said, surprising myself with how calm I felt. "Explain to a judge how your husband paying all the bills while you spend thousands on handbags is abuse. While you're at it, explain why you haven't held a job for more than 3 months in years. You're being a controlling bastard," she hissed. A real man wouldn't treat his wife this way. I stood up then, towering over her by nearly a foot. "No, a real man wouldn't let his wife walk all over him anymore. You want to live like a princess? start contributing like a partner. For the first time since I'd known her, Melissa was speechless. Her mouth opened and closed a few times, but nothing came out. Finally, she turned and stomped back to the bathroom, slamming the door so hard that a picture fell off the wall. That night, she slept in the guest room. I slept better than I had in years. The next morning, before heading to work, I left a note on the kitchen counter. I've set up a budget that actually reflects our income and expenses. Your card has a $200 weekly limit for personal spending. If you want more, get a job. If you decide to contribute to our household, either financially or by taking care of the home, we can discuss adjusting the budget. This isn't negotiable. When I got home that evening, the note was ripped to shreds on the counter, and Melissa was out. She didn't come home until after I'd gone to bed, and so began the Cold War of our marriage. The next few weeks were eye-opening, to say the least. Without unlimited access to my money, Melissa's true colors started to show. She'd always preached about female independence and empowerment in her social media posts. I checked. She was still posting inspirational quotes about knowing your worth and not settling. But behind closed doors, she was having a complete meltdown over not being able to buy whatever she wanted. What am I supposed to tell them? She complained one morning during our first actual conversation in days. Westfields is this overpriced place downtown where they charge $30 for avocado toast. Tell them whatever you want, I replied, packing my lunch for work, something I had started doing to save money. Or you could get a job and pay for your own brunch. A job? She said, as if I'd suggested she try eating rocks. You know how I feel about the exploitative nature of capitalism. I almost laughed in her face. This from the woman who had 13 different luxury handbags in our closet. Seems like you're fine with exploitation when it buys you nice things, just not when you have to be the one working for them. She tried everything over those weeks. Crying, screaming, guilt-tripping, even attempting to seduce me one night after weeks of no physical contact. When none of it worked, she started telling people I was abusive for expecting her to live on a budget. Her feminist friends were suddenly blowing up my phone, leaving messages about toxic masculinity and how restricting her financially is controlling behavior. One even said, I was intimidated by a strong woman. I almost laughed at that one. There was nothing strong about throwing a tantrum because your husband expects you to act like an adult. A few days later, I came home to find Melissa and 3 of her friends gathered in our living room, clearly there for me. It felt like some kind of intervention. Among them was Amber, twice divorced and always quick to post online about how men were trash. Then there was Rachel, who lived off her parents' money while running a barely functional wellness coaching business. And finally, there was Kayla, a successful real estate agent who had been cheating on her husband for years, a fact Melissa had told me after one too many wines, then sworn me to secrecy. Jake, Amber began as soon as I walked in, we're concerned about Melissa. She's told us how you've been financially controlling her. I set my lunchbox down on the counter, not even taking off my work boots. That's an interesting perspective, I replied. She has a right to financial independence, Rachel chimed in. What you're doing is a classic abuse tactic. I looked at each of them, and then at Melissa, who was sitting there with a smug expression that clearly said she thought she had me cornered. You know what? You're right. Melissa absolutely deserves financial independence. In fact, I encourage it. She should get a job, earn her own money, and spend it however she wants. That's what independence means. Kayla at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. It's not that simple, Jake. Marriage is a partnership. Your money is joint money. Funny how it's only joint money when she's spending it, I replied. But when I'm working 60-hour weeks to earn it, it's just expected. Tell me, if I decided to quit my job tomorrow and just relax at home while Melissa supported us, would you all be here defending my right to joint money then? That shut them up, at least briefly. Melissa jumped in, her voice trembling with what I now recognized as fake emotion. You're twisting things, Jake. I contribute in other ways. The emotional labor alone. What exactly is this emotional labor you keep talking about? I interrupted. Because from where I'm standing, I work all day, come home, cook my own meals, do my own laundry, and get zero emotional support from you. So, please explain to me and your friends exactly what labor you're contributing. The silence was deafening. Finally, Amber stood up, grabbing her designer purse, probably paid for by alimony from husband number 2. We're not going to stay here and watch you verbally abuse our friend. Come on, Melissa. You can stay with me tonight. I shrugged. Fine by me. Might want to pack a bag, though. Amber's 1-bedroom condo might get cramped after a while. They all left in a huff, with Melissa pausing only to grab some clothes and her essential toiletries. I locked the door behind them, and for the first time in months, enjoyed the peace and quiet of my own home. The real wake-up call came about a month into this new arrangement. I came home early from work one day, Our concrete delivery had been canceled last minute due to a supplier issue, to find Melissa in our bedroom digging through my side of the closet. She jumped when I walked in, looking guilty as hell. In her hand was my grandfather's watch, a vintage Omega he'd given me before he died. It wasn't worth a fortune, maybe a few thousand, but it was the only thing I had from him. "What are you doing with that?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. She straightened up quickly, shifting from guilt to defiance. "I was just looking at it. You were trying to take it." She rolled her eyes, but her face flushed. "Fine. I was going to sell it on eBay. I needed money for my hair appointment. And you're being unreasonable with this budget. I have standards to maintain." I stared at her, genuinely stunned. This woman, whom I had loved and supported for years, was ready to sell a family heirloom so she could get highlights. "Give me the watch," I said slowly, holding out my hand. She hesitated, then handed it over with a huff. "You're being ridiculous. It's just a watch. And you're being a thief. It's not just a watch. It's the only thing I have from my grandfather. But you don't care about that, do you? You only care about yourself." "Oh, please," she scoffed. "Don't be so dramatic." That night, I moved the watch and anything else valuable to a safe deposit box at my bank. As I lay in bed in our guest room, I'd been sleeping there for weeks now, I realized this marriage was beyond saving. The woman I'd married either never existed or had been replaced by this selfish, entitled stranger. But I wasn't going to just walk away after years of being used. No, if this was ending, it would be on my terms. About 6 weeks into the new financial arrangement, the cracks in Melissa's perfect image were showing. Without her usual salon appointments, her roots were growing out, her nails were chipped, and the designer clothes were cycling through more frequently as she couldn't buy new ones. She tried staying with Amber, but that only lasted a week before she came back, muttering something about needing space from each other. It seemed Amber's hospitality only lasted as long as Melissa was footing the bill. After those group nights, I started paying closer attention to Melissa during our evenings together. One night, while I was in the next room, I overheard her on the phone. She must have thought the running shower would hide her conversation from me. However, our bathroom vent was too efficient and carried her whispers directly to the guest room, where I now slept permanently. "It's so humiliating," she confided, clearly unaware of my presence. "He's acting like I'm some gold digger after everything I've sacrificed for this marriage." I had to suppress a laugh. What exactly had she sacrificed? Her career as a professional shopper? "No, I've tried talking to him," she continued. "He just doesn't understand. Being a wife is a full-time job. The emotional labor alone should be worth a salary." There it was again. Emotional labor. I had Googled it after she first mentioned it. Apparently, it referred to the invisible work of managing households, remembering birthdays, planning social events, and so on. A valid concept, sure, but Melissa didn't actually do any of that. I was the one who remembered her mother's birthday each year, who scheduled our furnace maintenance, and who ensured we had toilet paper before we ran out. "Well, I can't just leave," she said, lowering her voice. "My name's not on the house and I have nowhere to go. My parents already said they won't bail me out again after that whole credit card fiasco last year." Credit card fiasco? That was news to me, but it explained why her parents had been so cold at Christmas, lecturing her about fiscal responsibility. I know, she continued. "I'm working on him. He'll cave eventually. Men like him always do. They feel guilty. I just need to play nice for a bit, make him think I'm trying." That was when I decided to start documenting everything. I began taking photos of the house when I left for work, and when I returned showing. Nothing had changed. I kept receipts for all groceries, bills, and household expenses that I paid for alone. I recorded our conversations whenever she demanded more money while refusing to get a job. Was it petty? Maybe. But something told me I'd need evidence when this all finally fell apart. The real turning point came when I received a call from our joint credit card company about suspicious activity. It turned out Melissa had attempted to apply for a new card in my name, straight-up identity theft. When I confronted her, she acted as if I was overreacting. "It's not like we're not married," she scoffed. "What's yours is mine, right? Isn't that what you said in our vows?" I reminded her. "I also vowed to love and cherish you." Funny how she only remembered the parts that benefited her. That night, I called a lawyer. The next day, I opened a new checking account at a different bank and switched my direct deposit. I left just enough in our joint account to cover the bills, but nothing extra. I also installed a small camera in the living room, not hidden, but right there on the bookshelf next to our wedding photo. The irony wasn't lost on me. When Melissa noticed it and asked what it was, I replied, "It's security. I want to make sure nothing else goes missing from the house." She was furious, ranting about privacy and trust. I just looked at her and said, You tried to steal my identity to get a credit card. Trust is earned. Around this time, I discovered she had been texting her ex-boyfriend from college, the trust fund kid her parents had approved of, but who had dumped her senior year. The messages were filled with complaints about how miserable she was, how I didn't understand her, and how she might have made a mistake. I didn't confront her about it. I just added it to my growing file. What she didn't know was that I had already met with a divorce attorney, a bulldog of a woman who specialized in representing men in high-conflict divorces. She had walked me through what to expect and advised me to keep documenting everything while getting my finances in order. The biggest mistake men make, she told me, is leaving the house before legal proceedings begin. Stay put, keep records, and don't do anything that could be construed as abandonment. So that's exactly what I did. I stayed, watched, documented, and waited for Melissa to reveal her true colors. I didn't have to wait long. 3 months. Into our new arrangement, Melissa seemed to realize her tactics weren't working. The crying, the accusations, the manipulation, none of it was getting her back to her old lifestyle. So she tried a new approach, being nice. Suddenly she was making attempts at cooking dinner, though it was always burnt or barely edible. She started doing little chores around the house, poorly, but still trying. She even initiated sex for the first time in months, something I politely declined. I wasn't about to fall for it, and honestly, the idea of being intimate with someone who had so clearly shown their true character made my skin crawl. Her true self would show whenever she thought I wasn't paying attention. If something didn't go her way, like the time she cleaned the kitchen and I pointed out the moldy food still left in the fridge, she snapped, "At least I damn tried. God, nothing is ever good enough for you." Meanwhile, I was getting my act together. I was working out regularly at 5 a.m. before work, dropped 15 lbs of stress weight, and was starting to feel like myself again. I reconnected with friends she'd isolated me from because they were beneath us. My buddies from the construction crew, who she deemed too blue-collar. My high school friend who'd become a cop. My cousin who lived in a trailer but was the most genuine person I knew. I was also quietly moving forward with divorce preparations. My lawyer had everything she needed. Documentation of Melissa's financial irresponsibility, evidence she'd contributed virtually nothing to our household, proof of her attempted identity theft, and texts with her ex. In our state, while normally assets would be split 50-50, my lawyer was confident we could argue for an uneven split given the circumstances. The house itself was only in my name. I'd bought it just before our marriage, and while we lived in it together, Melissa had never contributed to the mortgage. My retirement accounts had similar protection. The debt, however, would be more complicated since most of it had been accumulated during the marriage, even if it was for her spending. One evening, in what would turn out to be our final week together, Melissa approached me with what seemed like genuine remorse. Tears in her eyes and her voice shaking, she said, "Jake, I know I've been terrible. You were right about everything. I've been selfish and entitled. I took advantage of your hard work and generosity. Please, can we try again? I miss us. I'll get a job. I'll be better." For a brief moment, I almost believed her. The way her voice caught, the way her eyes welled up, it was convincing. Then I noticed her phone lighting up with a notification on the coffee table. She'd left it face up, and I could clearly see a message preview from a dating app. She'd already been looking for her next meal ticket. "I miss us too," I said, deciding to play along. "Maybe we can work this out." The relief on her face was almost comical. She thought she'd won. "Really? Oh, Jake, I'm so glad. I promise things will be different." She leaned in to hug me, and I returned it half-heartedly. "We should talk about how we move forward," I said. "Maybe make some concrete plans." She nodded eagerly. "Absolutely. Whatever you want." "For starters," I said, "I think you should look for a job. Something stable with benefits if possible. Nothing's beneath you at this point. Even retail or food service could be a start." I watched her face closely. There it was, the briefest flash of disgust before she composed herself. "Of course, I've actually been looking at administrative positions. My business degree should help with that." "Great," I said. "And we should probably come up with a chore chart for the house. Split responsibilities fairly." Another flicker of irritation. "That makes sense, though. You know, I'm not great at cleaning. I just never learn properly." "I can teach you," I said, smiling blandly. "It's not that complicated." We went on like this for a while, me suggesting reasonable partnership behaviors, her reluctantly agreeing, while clearly hating every second. Finally, I said I was tired and headed to the guest room. "You could sleep in our room tonight," she suggested, a look I once would have found seductive on her face. "I think we should take things slow," I replied. "Rebuild trust before jumping back into anything physical." She nodded, trying to hide her disappointment. Of course, whatever you need. As I closed the guest room door behind me, I allowed myself a small smile. She really thought she was winning. She had no idea what was coming. 2 days after Melissa's heartfelt apology, I took a day off work. I told her I had meetings all day and would be home late. Don't wait up. She believed me. Why wouldn't she? I'd never lied to her before. She had plans to go shopping with the small allowance she'd earned by actually cleaning the house properly for once. Just some basics, she'd said, trying to sound responsible. Nothing extravagant. I nodded and added a little extra to her weekly limit as a reward for her efforts. In reality, I wanted her gone while I executed the final phase of my plan. With her out of the house, I made my move. The movers arrived at 9 a.m. sharp, a crew of 4 guys from my current job site who were happy to make some extra cash on their day off. I'd already packed up most of my personal belongings over the past week, little by little, storing boxes in my truck and taking them to my new place during lunch breaks. Just take the things I've marked with blue tape, I instructed, making it clear they should leave everything else behind. I had been methodical about it, marking only the furniture that was undeniably mine. The big TV in the living room was hers, along with the sectional couch she insisted we needed. But my dad's old leather recliner, my workbench from the garage, and my weights and bike were all coming with me. I had already secured a new apartment, closer to my job site, paying for 3 months in advance with some of the money I had been quietly saving. It wasn't fancy, just a 1-bedroom with a small balcony overlooking a park, but it was mine, and she had no idea it existed. While the movers worked, I went through each room one last time, making sure I hadn't missed anything important. In her bedroom, I opened the closet and looked at the clothes she had picked out for me over the years. Designer shirts I never felt comfortable in, expensive shoes that hurt my feet. I left them all behind. By noon, the movers had finished loading everything into their truck. I did one final walkthrough of the house, feeling a strange mix of sadness and liberation. 7 years of my life had been spent in this place. Not all the memories were bad. There had been good times, especially in the beginning. But it was time to go. In the kitchen, I left 3 things on the counter. Divorce papers already signed by me, a USB drive containing all my evidence of her behavior, and a letter explaining exactly why our marriage had failed. The letter was not angry or vindictive. It was matter of fact, detailing how her actions and choices had systematically destroyed what we built together. I ended it by wishing her well and hoping she would find what she was looking for. Before I walked out, I took one last look at our wedding photo still sitting on the bookshelf. We looked so happy, so full of hope. What had happened to those people? Shaking my head, I placed my house key and wedding ring next to the divorce papers and walked out, closing the door behind me. Then I turned off my phone, got in my truck, and drove straight to my buddy Mike's cabin 3 hours upstate. Mike had offered it as a refuge when I told him what was going down. "You'll need somewhere to decompress, man," he said. "Somewhere she can't find you right away." He was right. I spent the weekend fishing on the lake, drinking beers around the fire pit, and sleeping better than I had in years. No social media, no texts, no calls, just peace and the knowledge that I had finally taken control of my life. When I finally turned my phone back on Sunday night, I had 87 missed calls, 134 text messages, and 23 voicemails, all from Melissa and her friends. I listened to just one voicemail where she was sobbing uncontrollably. "Jake, please, you can't do this to me. I have nothing. The landlord says I have 30 days to move out because your name is on the lease and you've terminated it. I can't afford this place. Please call me back." The house we lived in. She always told her friends I had bought it. In reality, I had been renting it, saving for a down payment on a real home someday, a home I now realized I would never have shared with her. The owner was a cool older guy who had been understanding when I explained the situation. He agreed to end my lease early, but gave Melissa 30 days to find a new place. I scrolled through some of the texts, each one more desperate than the last. "Jake, please answer me. Where are you? You can't just abandon me like this. At least tell me where my things are. Did you really think I was texting with Brad? It wasn't what it looked like. I'm calling the police if you don't respond. The landlord came by and said we're being evicted. What did you do? My attorney says what you did is illegal. Please, Jake, I have nowhere to go." Her friends' messages were worse, filled with threats and insults. "You pathetic excuse for a man. We're reporting you for domestic abuse. You'll regret this when we're done with you. Real men don't abandon their wives. We always knew you weren't good enough for her." I blocked them all one by one, and then texted my lawyer. "It's done. She's found the papers. Expect her to contact you tomorrow." Over the next week, the messages from unknown numbers, her using her friends' phones after I blocked her, changed from desperate to threatening, then back to pleading. Her feminist friend stopped contacting me after my lawyer sent cease and desist letters. Apparently, their bravado disappeared when faced with actual legal consequences. The final message came 2 weeks after I moved out. It was different from the others. Jake, I get it now. I really messed up. You were right about everything. I've applied for 3 jobs this week. I'm staying with Amber now, but she's already making it clear I'll need to help with rent. It's only just hit me how much you actually did for me. I took you for granted, and I'm truly sorry. If you could just help me out until I get back on my feet, maybe loan me enough for a security deposit on a small apartment. I promise to pay you back. I've learned my lesson. I finally responded with just one message. It seems like you're finally experiencing the reality of being an independent adult. Congratulations on your personal growth. The divorce will be finalized in 60 days. Please, don't contact me again. Then I blocked her number for the final time. The aftermath unfolded pretty much as you'd expect. My lawyer was incredible, using the mountain of evidence I had gathered to counter every claim Melissa's hastily hired attorney made. They argued that she deserved half of everything because she had supported my career and maintained our home. The judge literally laughed when we presented photos of the house's condition and proof that she spent more on salon visits in a year than she contributed to our household during our entire marriage. In the end, we settled. I took on the debt. She had racked up about $25,000 after paying off some of it. In exchange, she waived any claims to my retirement accounts and future earnings. She got to keep her car, which I had paid off but put in her name, along with her clothes and some of the furniture. But I got my freedom. It's been 6 months now. The divorce was finalized faster than expected. Turns out when you have evidence of attempted identity theft, judges tend to be less sympathetic to claims of deserving half of everything. I bought a small house near my job site. Nothing fancy, just a 2-bedroom ranch on a 1/4 acre. But it's mine, paid for with the bonus I finally received and a down payment I had secretly saved for years. It's always clean and peaceful. There are no designer throw pillows or live, laugh, love signs, just comfortable furniture and the freedom to leave my work boots wherever I damn well please. I'm dating again, casually, nothing serious. I met a nurse named Sarah at my buddy's barbecue. She works 12-hour shifts at the hospital, knows how to change her own oil, and even offered to split the check on our first date.